if you are trying to do too much, you can get bogged down and nothing gets done, or nothing gets done well. Because here's the truth. Even with multiple screens and browsers open in different places, I can only be working in one at a time. And the same is true with all of our projects and goals. Yes, I can have multiple projects that I'm working on, but I can still do only one of them at a time. Hi, I'm Chris LeBrun, your host of the Wholistic Productivity Podcast. As someone who's never been afraid of dreaming big and going for it all, I often find myself with a lot on my plate. I'm a husband and father, a nonprofit fundraiser, and an entrepreneur. What I've realized is my view of productivity was pretty toxic. After decades of believing that in order to do more, you had to work harder, I began to see productivity as this beautiful thing. Holistic productivity is the idea that you can accomplish your professional, personal, and purpose-driven goals in a healthy way, and doing so will make you happier and more fulfilled. Join me each week as we break down myths about productivity, share practical tips for maximizing your time, energy, and focus, and hear from others about their productivity journey. This is the Wholistic Productivity Podcast. Hello and welcome to episode number 51 of the Wholistic Productivity Podcast. My name is Chris LeBrun. I'm a productivity coach. I'm your host. So good to have you here today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for spending this time with me and with your goals. And I've got a question that I want to start off with today. What are you building? What are you building? I asked this question the other day in the Holistic Productivity community on School. Loved the responses that I got. I don't know that I asked this question of myself often enough. What am I trying to accomplish? Not this hour, not today, or not even this week. But what am I using my efforts and energy to build? What's my life mission? Now, maybe I got off in the deep end way too quick. That's just too deep of a question for your morning commute, or, while you're cooking dinner, or, just hanging out in the evening trying to relax. Whenever you listen to the podcast, I hope I didn't get too deep. But if you don't have an answer to that question, I invite you just to sit with it for a minute. Maybe journal about it, or talk to your spouse or a close friend. I believe that the easier it is for us to answer that question, the easier it's going to be for us to achieve something meaningful in our life. The more clarity you have about your goals and the why behind them, the reason that they are your goals, the easier it will be to find success, to find happiness, and to find fulfillment on this journey. And if you need help answering the question or finding clarity, let me know. I'd love to chat with you. Check out the show notes. There's a link there for a free 20-minute strategy session where we can start answering that question, because I would love to see you achieve your biggest goals. That's why I do the podcast. I say it every time. Help you dream big, plan smart, and live fully. Just wanted to ask that question today before we jumped into the conversation, but let's dive into it. Today is going to be a fun conversation, and one that I hope will give you some practical tools that you can use while you're on that goal journey. Not long ago, I was telling my wife about an idea I had for coordinating and hosting an international group travel experience for friends and family. I've coordinated group travel before for work, and it's amazing, honestly. I was telling her how we could get group rates to make it more affordable for everyone, and just how much fun it is to travel in a group. Now, if you don't know my wife, she is an introvert, and so she was more than a little skeptical about this. I was not having a good time convincing her that this was going to be amazing. But after listening to me talk about it for a while, how we could do it and how great it would be, she looked at me and she said, "How many tabs are open in your browser right now?" Now, she may have been talking about her internet browser, but I think I know her well enough to know that she was talking about my mental browser. Now, this is so funny because I didn't expect it, but the more I think about it, it probably is a pretty fair question. I've got quite a few things going on. I have my full-time job as a nonprofit fundraiser. This work as a productivity coach and host of the podcast. I'm getting ready to launch sales of my physical planner, the Holistic Productivity Planner, later this year. I have an online Lego business that I used to do a lot more with, but right now I'm kind of winding it up, trying to get ready to sell it. And so if you want to buy that, let me know. And I recently started working on another business idea that I paused over a year ago. Okay. Should mention I'm training for a half marathon. There's also the personal time, family responsibilities. So yeah, if you got tired just listening to that list, don't worry. This doesn't have to be your list. I'm not advocating that everybody be involved in this many projects, but her browser analogy was fantastic because we've all had that old computer that slows down if you have too many applications running or too many tabs open in your browser at once. And as I say that, I'm wondering if my wife was calling me old. So that may be something that I need to go back and ask for some clarification on. But look, this is true for all of us, no matter what age we are. If you are trying to do too much, you can get bogged down and nothing gets done, or nothing gets done well. Because here's the truth. Even with multiple screens and browsers open in different places, I can only be working in one at a time. And the same is true with all of our projects and goals. This is a great time to remind you that multitasking doesn't exist. It just does not work. Yes, I can have multiple projects that I'm working on, like the list that I just mentioned, but I can still do only one of them at a time. So how am I able to, as my wife put it the other day, have so many open browser tabs? How do I juggle all of these big projects that I have going on at once? More importantly, what are some practical things that you can do to juggle all of your projects? Now, the first thing I recommend is getting everything out of your head. Before you can even start to prioritize, you need clarity. You need to know what you're looking at. Getting everything out of your head also closes the open loops that keep our brain going, even when we don't want it to be running. So grab a notebook or a piece of paper and list every active goal that you have in your head right now. I like breaking them out into the 3 pillars of holistic productivity. That's professional, personal, and purpose driven. But list everything. Everything, the ideas, the goals that you have, the half-started projects, the wish list items, the things that you thought about and kind of tried to put out of your head, everything. If you've read David Allen's book, Getting Things Done, or GTD, he suggests using index cards or individual pieces of paper and only listing one goal or project on each sheet or card. This lets you go through and sort and categorize everything. Now, it really comes down to what you like, what's helpful for you. I prefer to use a digital note-taking app like Capacities because I'm able to categorize notes. I'm able to add links to websites or link several notes together if they're connected. And then there's a search tool that helps me find all those old notes. I'll put a link into the show notes for Capacities if you have not heard. I've talked about it before, but it's just a great note-taking tool or a tool for your personal knowledge management system. Look, it doesn't matter how or where you do this. Just get everything out of your head and written down somewhere. Now, once you have a master list, start prioritizing each goal. I like to use something that I call the Focus Allocation Model. It sounds much more boring than it really is, but the Focus Allocation Model. This lets me know how much time and energy each project and goal is going to require. Now, there are 4 categories within this Focus Allocation Model. There are strategic goals, maintenance goals, development goals, and deferred goals. And we're going to run through each of those here and look at what they mean so you start to get an idea how this system works. Strategic goals are things you're actively advancing. These receive the highest level of focus. They have prime calendar space on your calendar. With our strategic goals, we are intentionally accelerating these goals during this season. And it's really important to note that I recommend only having one strategic goal for each pillar of your life. So a professional goal might be to launch a new marketing strategy. A personal goal might be completing a home renovation. Or one of your purpose-driven goals might be to write and publish a book. The key here is that these are goals that you are actively working on. They are priority for you, and you are going to give them the most time and attention out of any goals that you have going. Maintenance goals is the next category, and these are goals that you are intentionally sustaining, but they don't need that strategic level of effort and energy. These goals matter deeply, but they're not in a growth phase right now, but they are being preserved at a steady and healthy rhythm. Maintenance goals receive recurring focus, but a lighter time investment than your strategic goals. And this helps prevent regression and protect your long-term progress. Now, depending on your time commitment, you may be able to have 2 or 3 maintenance goals for each pillar of your life. So let's look at some of the examples of maintenance goals. Tracking your personal or small business finance, maybe reading 3 books a month, or maintaining a regular workout schedule to stay in shape. The next type of goal that we want to look at are development goals. These are things that you are researching or testing, but they are not yet operational. These goals might receive designated thinking or planning time because they're being evaluated for future promotion to strategic or maintenance goals. And because of that, we still want to limit how many we have. It's important to realize that we're not ranking goals by importance per se. We're looking at our level of focus that we're going to be able to devote to these. And this will change based on the season or the capacity, whatever is going on in your life. So again, just because something is only a development goal does not mean that it's not important. Here are some examples of development goals. Maybe you're researching an international travel adventure, or you're learning about a new hobby. You haven't started the hobby yet, but you're just learning about it to see if this is something that you really want to get into. Or maybe you're considering a new volunteer role. The final category is deferred goals. And these goals are still important, but you've intentionally set them aside for now. You're not saying never, you're saying not now. They receive no calendar space or active energy from you during this time or season. Deferred goals protect clarity and preserve ideas without abandoning it. And they also reduce cognitive overload by getting them out of your head. There are things that I have thought about and I didn't write them down, I didn't put them aside, and they keep gnawing at me. I keep thinking about them over and over. They're taking time and energy and thought. I want to get those out of my head so that I don't forget about them, but so I don't have to actively be thinking about them and giving them time and space. What are examples of deferred goals? Maybe that's learning a new language, or buying a new RV, or organizing 20 years of digital photos. This is one that's been on my deferred goals list for quite a while. At some point I need to do it. I've got years, decades of photos I have to go through. You see how these all work together? This focus allocation model ensures that every goal in your life has a clear status so that you can pursue multiple goals without fragmenting your focus to the point where you are unable to work on anything or you're working on the wrong things. Once all your goals are categorized, Now comes the reality check. How do you fit all of your strategic and maintenance goals into your calendar? One step I do with my coaching clients is to map out a template for your ideal week. I love a good excuse to create a spreadsheet. And this is the perfect opportunity to you just put the days of the week in the columns across the top of the page, and then put the hours of the day in rows on the left. Now, you may be able to use one row for each hour, or if you want to get more granular, you could do one row for each half hour. I don't recommend getting any more granular than that. It's usually not necessary because this is a template and it gets too hard to manage if you get that granular. Now start blocking out time, scheduling time for your constants. Put in the important things like your sleep schedule, your work schedule. Right now, we're just blocking your work hours. If you want to come back later and flesh that out a little bit with things like standing meetings or team rhythms, you can do that. Okay. But for right now, let's just block out your work hours. Now start to put in things like family schedules and commitments. You also want to schedule self-care time for your exercise or workouts, or sitting on the deck and drinking your coffee in the morning if that's important to you. Now add margin or white space time that you can use for emergencies or anything that pops up. Now, I want to say here, emergencies should be things that you truly can't plan for, not things that you didn't plan for, but you should have. That definition of emergencies will always get you in trouble, but you should have time for those actual emergencies, those things that pop up, so that you don't throw the rest of your schedule off. The next step is to look at what's left. And this is where my clients usually have their sort of aha moment, right? They realize that they either have less time than they thought, or they realize that they have too many things on their plate, or sometimes they realize that they have more available margin time than they assumed. If they have been using this time sort of unproductively, maybe they realize, oh, wow, I have a big block of time here that I could do something with. Looking at what's left, you can start allocating time for your different pillars. And this may sound similar to time blocking, and it is, but what's different here is we're not putting in specific projects or tasks at this point. We're just looking at the pillars, professional, personal, and purpose driven. The other difference is that time blocking is an execution tool, and the ideal week is a capacity design tool. We're building a template for your ideal week. And you already have your professional time scheduled already. So what I'm looking here to do is put in time that I can use for my personal or purpose-driven projects. If you want, you can assign time for your personal strategic goals or your personal maintenance goals, but it's not really necessary at this point. You can do that each week when you actually schedule your projects. I do that during my Sunday strategy weekly planning time. So right now you are just looking at when you have time for your personal or your purpose-driven projects. So what does my ideal week look like? Well, my biggest blocks of time are on the weekends. Saturday, I have personal time scheduled for my long run as I'm training for my half marathon. Sunday is for my purpose goals and when I work on this podcast. During the week, I have smaller windows of time, and that's when I schedule most of my maintenance projects and my margin time. Now, I want to underscore this again. Your ideal week is just a template. It helps you manage your capacity and allocate your focus before you assign ambition. An important question to answer is how many deep work blocks actually exist in your ideal week. If your purpose-driven goals need 10 hours a week, but your ideal week reveals that you only have 4 hours that are realistic, that's good to realize because you don't have a motivational problem. You have a capacity problem. And at this stage, you may want to go back to your categories and review them. You may be able to realign some strategic goals to maintenance goals. You may want to move more things to your deferred list because look, a not now list is a powerful tool for what you can actually accomplish today. Remember, the goal isn't to do everything. The goal is to design a life where the right things get done at the right time. And here's the thing: overwhelm happens when everything feels equally important, when nothing has been ranked, and decisions are happening in real time. You're not behind, you're not unmotivated, you're unprioritized. And that's something that we can fix. So here's the challenge I have for you this week. These are 3 steps that you can take to start managing all the goals and projects that are competing for your focus and your time. And this is kind of a recap of what we've talked about today. So step 1, do a brain dump of all your goals and projects. Get them out on paper. Get them out on a digital note or a Word document or Google Docs. Get them somewhere. Get them all out so you can see everything that is on your radar. Now, step 2, categorize them using the Focus Allocation Model. Strategic things, these are things that you are actively advancing in this season or this time. Your maintenance goals are number 2, projects that you are intentionally sustaining so that you don't lose your progress. Development goals is the 3rd category. These are things that you're designing or preparing for. And number 4 is your deferred goals, projects that have been paused for a future season and are on your not now list. And step number 3 in this challenge that I want you to do this week, create your ideal week template so that you know how much time you have available. Start with the big things: sleep, professional projects, family time, self-care, and margin, and then see what's left and assign specific times to specific pillars. You'll get more granular when you're doing your weekly planning. Remember, this is just a template. It's not something that you're going to be changing every week, but it's a tool that you can use when you're planning your week to know where different types of projects have space in your schedule. So you don't have to reinvent that wheel every single week. All right, can you do that this week? I guarantee you, when you go through this process, you will have so much clarity and understanding about your goals and the importance that they play in your life and where they need to find time and space on your calendar. You'll have that ideal week template, and you'll be able to use that each week as you plan your week, and you'll be able to get so much more done because you've been intentional about your schedule. All right, I can't wait to see how that works out for you. Let me know. Drop me a note in the comments or somewhere. I'd love to see how you do with this challenge. Well, that's it for the show. Thank you so much for being here. Check out the show notes. Again, we'll have all the links in there. You can find that at holisticproductivity.com/51. And make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube before this is over. While you're already in the app, whatever you're listening to it on, just go ahead and like, follow, and subscribe. That way you will get all of the next episodes when they come out each Tuesday. That would be fantastic. And I would love to have you rate the show. If you found it valuable, go ahead on that podcast platform or on YouTube, just give it 5 stars or whatever you think you need to give it. But I would love to hear your thoughts on that. And that just helps other people find the show and realize that this is something that people are getting value from. Make sure to follow at Wholistic Productivity on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Substack. Lots of great productivity tips and motivation throughout the week. You don't want to miss that. And I mentioned this at the beginning, but join Wholistic Productivity on School. We'll have a link in the show notes. Again, this community is so exciting to watch what everybody is doing, to see the goals that they are trying to reach and the life that they are trying to build. I would love to have you be a part of that. And so go check that out. Again, thank you so much for listening. I love that you are here because my goal, the reason that I do this podcast, is to help you achieve your goals, to help you dream big, plan smart, and live fully. And I'm so excited for that to happen in your life. I can't wait. All right, take care. We'll see you next time. Bye.